Well, good morning, everybody. Rod back with you again. Sorry I've been busy with some personal things with the family. Um, haven't been doing much in the way of videos or shooting or anything of the sort. My excuse me, my father's been going back and forth to doctors, and I've been sort of his kind of courier to the doctors, his chauffeur, if you want to call it. Um, he's doing okay. We found out that my dad has a kidney tumor. It's in the early stages, but we're doing quite a few trips back and forth to the doctors and specialists and whatnot. So my time has been occupied with, excuse me, with his health, and I apologize for being absent. I've been watching the few lives from Coba and kind of chiming in on a hey, how are you type thing there, and thought I would do something. I seen sort of a guy that was posting, about black powder shot shells, and on another channel, and how he loaded them and how he made them, stating that certain wads could cause a damascus or twist barrel to explode by using them. So, of course, you know me, with shotguns and old shotguns, and especially something with damascus or twist barrels or laminated barrels, that's kind of right up my alley. So I said, nah, I wouldn't say that a shotgun barrel can burst. Any shotgun barrel can burst if you load ammo improperly, or if you use the incorrect ammunition, that gun wasn't intended for. For instance, he was using Daisy steel shot in a Belgian side-by-side laminated 12 gauge and shooting it at tin cans and trying to show how much force and how much power it had to pass through the can at a certain range. And the gun shot it, but in that respect, why would you shoot a shot type that the material of the shot is made of a harder material than the actual barrel that is being fired out of? So, of course, you're going to have to wonder, is there going to be any bad barrel damage, or possibly, a barrel could burst, going through the chokes, especially, depending on how it's choked. Some of them are choked full, some are choked full modified, etc. So, I will go over how I load them, and I use both plastic and paper hulls, and I use the old traditional method of roll crimping. And I happen to have an old vintage crimp tool. I've got several, actually. I got some for 12 and I got some for 16 gauge, because I do it for both of them. Also, the type of wad. So let's get started with that. When I load black powder paper shells or plastic, they end up looking like this, traditional rolled paper shells. That's a federal gold medal, which started life as, you buy them once fired out west. We're in Canada here. There's a place called Belozer's Fine Guns, and I buy 100 of these things in a bag for $20. But they're 2 3/4 inches long, so I give them a little trim here. Now you see it's a little off here. That's nothing. So you give them a little trim, and you end up with a 2.5 inch, or a little more than 2.5 inch, maybe 2 5/8 or so. Which shoots fine in a 2.5 chamber. That's like, it's with paper shells. It's very forgiving, especially with fiber wads. But I have some here that I've actually got there precisely measured them, because some of my guns have really abrupt stopping chambers. There's no taper to the forcing cone. Some of my guns are tapered the way they were made, so this is not going to bother them at all. So the other way you can go is with plastic. Now these are your Kent. My buddy shoots these cheapy game loads, steel shot, mind you, when he was shooting these things, number 7 steel shot target loads. And I gathered these up from a shoot that they had at his cottage. I shot in it as well, and I just gathered these up off the ground, and I did the same thing with the plastic hull, cut it and roll crimped it. Now the tool I used is one of these. Now you can go to gun shows, you can go online. These are quite common. This is a vintage roll crimper. Now this one here happens to be probably from the turn of the century, thereabouts. Bolts to a tabletop, and you know how these work, guys. You put this on your table, and you take ye old shell, you insert it like that, and you take the handle and close on it, and as you rotate this assembly, you apply pressure here, and it forces the crimp closed, and you end up with that. Well, a roll crimp shell. So this is technically what you would have had years ago into an old, buy an old box of shells, roll crimp. And for safety's sakes and for, no confusion, any black powder round I do, I take a Felty marker and I color the primer black. So it indicates black powder or Pyrex, substitute, whatever. So, now what do I put in them? So, being that real black powder is getting really expensive, and whatnot, I will use the Pyrex RS, very common. It's actually excellent stuff to use in shot shells. You measure it as you would do in a muzzle loader. I use like a black powder measure here, so this is from 60 to 120 grains, so it's set for 60 already. I'll go 60, 70, 80, 90 grains, and I fill this up, dump it in, and my powder charge is set to that amount. Now, do you have to use 90? No. Can you use less? Yes. Could you use more? Yes, but there's no real benefit because you only have so much room in this shot shell. So you want to make sure at least you can get your shot, your wad, and your powder charge all nice and compacted in there, and nice and tight fitting, and have a nice looking shell like this when you're done. As you can see, there's your shell difference. So 2.5 open, so they're going to be about 2 and let's say 3/8 closed. So anyhow, that's that. The wads that he was using were like typical fiber wads. You can buy these from like right here. A friend of mine got me these while he was visiting the U.S., but I have lots of other ones here. These are made by Oxyoke. These are lubricated, but I'm going to use these in my percussion shotgun. But just to say that you can buy them like this, these can be used in them, and 100 of these in the States, I think that's what's in this bag, 100-piece bag, yep, for $7.99 at the Kittery Trading Post in Maine. But you can buy them in Canada. Below Zero sells them through Ballistic Products, and I believe I bought a bag of 500. I think they were around $28. Excuse me. And they look like this. These are stiff, waxed cards, or cushions, sorry. And these here are 3/8. You can get them in different thicknesses, like 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/8, to tailor your wad column height. Now, how do I exactly load them? So we've already talked about the 90 grain charge of powder. Dump that in. Then I will take a nitro card wad, which is one of these, 1/8 of an inch, stiff. And these are divided in the middle. You can see here's little lines, maybe. Maybe not, I don't know. I can't focus in when it's like that. But anyway, take my word for it. You could take like a utility blade and cut these and make small little thin cards. Which you end up having thin little cards like this here that you can cut out of bristle board. See with a punch? These are very thin. And I use these for the final, like over the shot. But if you don't have any of these thin ones, and you get a bunch of those, looks like I got boxes of them, but you can see how thin that is versus this. So this will go over my shot. This will go between my powder. Now, the theory behind it is that this goes over the powder to make a gas seal. So then you insert a cushion wad, and you have this. Now what I like to do, and you don't have to, but I do, you can take another nitro card, and I cut mine in half at this point, and put one over here, and it makes like a little piston. So you got like your piston in the middle, and your ring on the top, and your ring on the bottom. So there's your gas seal and your cushion. So this absorbs recoil. This keeps your gas from going past and interfering with your shot, or in this case, your possible type of wads you may want to put on top of there, or a shot cup. Now, you can put your shot directly on top of this and put it inside the shot shell, put your overshot wad, close the shell, call it a shell, call it loaded. I do that, and that's how these were made. But in this one I used, this gray one, I loaded a nitro card, a fiber wad, and I decided to go on top of that with a plastic shot cup. Now these are made for shooting in percussion shotguns. They got the hole there, so when you put the thing down, the wad down, the air kind of whizzes up through there, so it doesn't like lock in the bore and start like a really tight seal, and it's hard to load because you're trapping air between your wad column and your shot cup. So they've just taken a little drill bit or something and poked a hole in it, and it just goes down. So that's one I use. These are like an 1.1 ounce shot cup. These are no bag of Federal ones I bought at a gun show. But if you don't have any of those, what you can do, if you want to have it loaded like that, you can take like a Winchester, or let me see here. Yeah, like a Winchester wad. This is a 12 super light AA. You can cut the skirt off here, the legs, and use that shot cup the same way in the shot shell. Now what does that do? I've found that it improves patterning, but with appropriate shot, lead shot, bismuth shot, tungsten shot, that's softer than the barrel material. So when you have ye old gun here, like, you know, my old Belgian Beauty here, my old 16, you know, you can see the twist pattern there, and right here in the barrels. Well, when this gun was built, steel shot wasn't even thought of. And shot cups technically weren't even thought of. They used the old traditional sense of loading ammunition, like I just showed you, with fiber wads and card wads, lead shot, and black powder. Now, what can happen, he said, is you use a plastic wad and it'll pass through a choke and it'll explode. Well, that's false. What happens when you use this wad like it is if I seat this on top of black powder ignites extremely hot. It's a lot more of an abrupt burn versus smokeless powder that burns progressively. Black powder will burn within the first 12 inches of your barrel. And that's why if you look at a Damascus barrel, they're very thick at the start. And once you get to about the fore end, or just beyond, they really taper off, because all it's doing is stabilizing a shot column, and the pressure is way, way, way down. So there's no, you know, it's not like a new shotgun where they're not made that thick, and then they're made even, you know, pretty much like, there ain't much of a taper in the barrel diameters. The wall thickness, I should say. The bore stays the same. But the thickness of the barrel, they're a lot smaller, they're a lot lighter these days. They're made, like people say, oh, they're made light, they're made tinny, they're made garbagey. But the quality of the steel they use now is better. I'm not going to go and say that a Damascus barrel shotgun is tougher or better than a modern gun. It's the fact that newer ammunition now is made to higher pressure standards than what they were years ago. A typical black powder 12 gauge round, a field load, let's just give it, you know, apples to apples here, excuse me, will generate about 6,500 to, let's say at the most, 8,000 psi, 7,500 psi. And that's a big bang at the start, and then when it stabilizes, or when it shoots out the barrel about halfway down, cut that pressure in about half, you're down to about 3,000, 3,500 pounds, and it's just stabilized and shot out the barrel. So that's how those barrels were made. The Damascus and twist and laminate. Thick breeches and very thin muzzles. And that's why you gotta watch them. You gotta watch for rust in them, because there's not much meat there. So if they're really rusty and they're really in bad shape, you know, just hang them on a wall and look at them. Okay, I'm not gonna argue the fact. Have a gunsmith, somebody who's qualified, check them out, just, you know, look for some rust and pitting. If there's minor pitting, expect it. You're shooting guns that are 120, 130 plus years old, you're going to have something in there, unless somebody took the barrels and honed them right out, or the gun was basically hardly ever shot and the guy cleaned it to a T. and that'll happen. And I've got one here like that the guy shot, cared for it like a child, and the barrels are clean. My 16 here's got some pitting in the barrel. I still shoot it. It's safe. It's fine. So, do I recommend shooting modern ammunition in it? Absolutely not. Most modern ammunition now comes as we see it, the star crimped Winchester cheapy target loads that you get, the steel base on them there. You can buy them at Canadian Tire, you can buy them anywhere online in bulk packs. Guys go out and shoot skeet economically. Price of shot materials now, it's just that expensive. Only reason I reload is for the old guns, because you can't really go to a store and buy the said shells. The shell lengths aren't available anymore, and black powder shells are not very common in Canada on a shelf. They can be gotten. Kent Game Board does make them, but they're extremely hard to get. And so people are, better off doing this. If you can spare the time and have the patience, and you find the proper tooling and the proper wads. You go to gun shows and you scour the tables, and let's say you go there and you find an old, you find some old CIL shot wads here. These are just card wads for 12 gauge. I got these at a deal, so it was 500 in here. Still quite a bit left, and I've got more than that. And they are bought. You can get them from Ballistic Products and Circle Fly and multiple other companies that make them available in Canada. Available in the US as well through Ballistic Products, Midway USA, a whole bunch of spots that you can buy these materials. So in closing, what I will say is, he said that the plastic wads, I'll get back before I close. Sorry, I lost track. Before I close, he said if you use a wad like this, that they can cause an obstruction in the choke and explode the barrel. Untrue. A full choke in a Damascus barrel and a full choke in a smokeless steel barrel is a full choke. What happens is, when the black powder hits this plastic gas seal here, it melts. Every time you shoot the gun, a layer of plastic is formed on the barrel. And what does it do? It forms a layer and it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Now, some people argue the fact it doesn't do that. I'm telling you my experience that it has, and I stopped doing it, because at the end of the day, when I go clean the gun, it's like a giant plastic tapeworm coming in the barrel, and every couple of shots you'd fire, you felt more recoil. That's because the pressures were spiking, because there's more of a constriction. The entire bore became a choke, not just the choke in the barrel. The whole bore is coated with this stuff. So these wads were not invented when those Damascus barrel shotguns were around. They used fibrous, papers type wads, and these will literally disintegrate, like if they're, dried out too much. But what they used to use on these to lubricate them, they used to impregnate them with wax, and that lubricated the bore every shot going down. It made the shooting and cleaning them a lot easier. So this will not explode the barrel because of what they are. What it will do and can do, if the barrels are in poor condition with pitting and rot and dents and whatnot, the more plastic you put inside the bore, the tighter the choke is. So eventually you're going like from a 12 gauge to a 13 gauge, and you're forcing a 12 gauge wad through a smaller choke, a smaller constriction to the whole bore. Pressure spikes hard on the gun. Don't recommend doing it. Do it if you want, but I don't recommend it. And I've been around shotguns enough and shoot them enough, and I consider myself a seasoned shooter, if you so will. I'm not going to say I'm a professional. I'm not going to say I'm a certified gunsmith. I'm not. But I am a seasoned shooter that's very experienced with this. I've done this. Don't do it. I've learned. Don't do it. What you do is you load the old traditional way. Nitro card, fiber wad, seal it, dump your shot, and your other card on top, and you've got your shot column like that, and then you put it in your shot shell as such, prepare it, dump everything in, powder, nitro card, felt wad or fiber, Put your other gas seal on top if you want. You don't have to, but you can. I usually run an ounce to an ounce and an eighth a shot with an 80 to 90 grain load of Pyredex. That pretty much equals like a, a really decent factory, or like what you'd buy now, like a trap load or something similar. That range of performance, and you'll have no problem shooting small game birds, rabbits, and busting clay targets where lead shot can be used. If you want to waterfowl hunt with them, I suggest you buy yourself some bismuth shot or TSS shot, something of that effect. It's going to cost you an arm and 2 legs. A bag of lead here now is like $88 for 25 pounds. I used to get them for 19 bucks. That just tells you how much times have changed. A pound of Pyredex up here is about 50 bucks now. Primers, 100 primers, going to run you about $14, $15. And the wads, the fiber wads, you buy them out west, 28 bucks a bag, and 20 bucks a bag for the cards. So once you get your materials together, you can make an amount of ammunition from what you have. So is it cost effective if you have several guns like I do? Sure is. Because I can take this cartridge, this 12 gauge shell I loaded, and I can shoot this in any of my Damascus guns with no issues. And I can also shoot any of these in my Damascus guns with plastic, even though they're modern looking. The shell has no bearing on what pressure is there with black powder. Now, in closing, I will say also that some guys will take a mech loader or a modern loader. These are 2.5-inch factory shells from Lyle. You can buy, the Challenger makes them now in Canada. Some guys have converted their 2 3/4-inch mech loaders where they can actually use conventional star crimp, no roll tool if you can't find one, load them the same way, and they can get their Damascus guns back on the field. Now, the problem with plastic hulls eventually is black powder will burn pinholes in them, and that's unavoidable. That's just the way it is. Paper hulls last a bit longer, believe it or not, but the plastic ones melt on the inside, and you'll start to see little pinholes burn down here. I don't have one here because I usually discard them, but the paper ones usually start to get little, like there is one here. I've fired this about 7 or 8 times, I'm sure. There's like a little tiny, you can't see it there, but take my word for it, right here is a tiny pinhole above the brass, and I just had this for demonstration purposes. But for 20 bucks, 100 hulls, and you get 6 or 7 firings before they start burning through, I think it's worth the money. So, to close, no, it is not correct that they can explode because of the plastic wad going through the choke. What can happen is a bore obstruction or constriction can cause pressure to spike, which can be unsafe and cause a barrel to rupture. That I will agree to. What I don't agree to is like passing through this, like he said, this wad passing through a choke can cause the barrel to burst and explode. And there's no real validity to it other than the fact that this puts plastic coating on the entire bore and the whole barrel becomes a choke, and that's where the problem arises. So with black powder shot shells, if you're loading with this, by the time the wad would get to the muzzle, the pressures would be that much lower that even though they did spike, I don't believe that the pressure would spike to that point where it would be unsafe in the gun. So when they proofed black powder guns back in the day, I believe they proofed them at 4 times what the gun was going to shoot on the field. And I believe that standard it goes today in proof houses that still proof guns, like over in Europe. They'll proof them at 4 times the normal charge and heavier shot weights to make sure the barrels won't burst if there's a pressure spike. So they make it safe for the consumer to say that, okay, we've tested 10 of these guns and we've tested them at, let's say, 80,000 psi with 10 rounds and nothing happened. So the chance of you firing, a factory round, the barrel bursting because of a plastic wad going through the choke, very slim. Now, if a wad goes down the bore and gets like a squib load and you don't notice, you're in the thrill of the moment, you're going bang bang shooting, and this wad stops halfway down the barrel and you shoot something behind it, well, you're going to have problems. That's going to make like a literal pipe bomb, and yes, the barrel can expand, or it will burst. And I've seen pictures, and I've actually had a buddy of mine with a brand new Browning that happened with Kent steel shot. He fired, wad got lodged about maybe that far from the choke, just the way it is. The shell didn't have that much oomph. There was a squib. He was shooting waterfowl with a bunch of guys, a lot of shots going off, a lot of noise. He didn't notice that his report of his gun was a little dead compared to the others, and he fired the next shot, just bang. Well, he had a brownie coat hanger after that. So, closing, take what I say in the video with a grain of salt, or take it with great advice. It's up to you. But that's how I load my black powder shot shells, and that's how I shoot my guns, and so on and so forth. So guys, have a good day. I am off to go to the car dealer with my car. Got to get it checked out there, and we will talk to you later. Enjoy the day.